You're listening to The Portfolio Composer, hosted by me, Dr. Garrett Hope, where business and creativity go hand in hand. Join us at theportfoliocomposer.com for news, talks, and workshops. This episode is brought to you by Dorico, the music notation software from Steinberg that's designed to save you time. Dorico 4, Steinberg's latest major version of music notation and composition software for Mac OS and Windows, is packed with powerful new features that are designed to accelerate your workflow and make it quicker and easier than ever to go from inspiration to finished product. If you're a composer, arranger, or orchestrator, you'll be delighted by the sophisticated new tools on offer. And there are improvements across the whole application, whatever your focus. For more information and to download a free 30-day trial of Dorico 4, visit www.steinberg.net/TPC. Hello, and welcome to episode 248 of the Portfolio Composer podcast. I'm your host, your coach, and your teacher, Garrett Hope. Today, we invite back to the Portfolio Composer, Joseph Sowa, who was first featured in episode 235 last year. Joseph started the Wizarding School for Composers and is now starting something else that he's here to tell you about that I think is pretty cool. In this episode, Joseph and I speak at length about collaboration and how we can learn from the creative process within media, such as creating film scores, and take that knowledge and put it into the concert music world. We also explore how issues of faith and Jesus as the ideal artist can inform the work we do as creatives in building our businesses, building our network, and most importantly, serving others. And then Joseph and I speak about the Career Success Spellbook. You're going to hear this later in the show, but I want you to hear it multiple times so you can remember. If you're interested in learning more about the Career Success Spellbook, go to josephsowa.com/TPC Spellbook. That's all one word, TPC Spellbook. This is a great episode, and I think you're going to get a lot out of it. I also want to let you know some of the things that are coming up in the Portfolio Composer world, and that includes new submissions for the Ultimate Music Business Summit 2023. If you want to be the first in line to get your tickets, and if you have an idea of a session proposal that you want to put forward for the summit, please get on the Summit mailing list, and you can do that at musicsummit.biz, or actually just email me through the contact page at the Portfolio Composer, and I can make sure that you get added to that list. And be sure to sign up for the Friday 5 newsletter through theportfoliocomposer.com. This is where I send nearly weekly emails with 5 things I've been thinking about or learning that I want to share with you that I think could benefit your business, your life, or sometimes are just interesting. And they tickled my fancy. And I think they'll tickle yours too. All right, enjoy the episode. Joseph Sowa, it's Dr. Joseph Sowa. Welcome back to the Portfolio Composer.
Thanks, Garrett. It's really great to be back. You just have such a great podcast, and it's just fun. It's fun to be one of your guests. It's just fun to sit around and chat with you.
Well, thanks. That really does mean a lot to me. But I want to kind of build you up a little bit. So you were on the podcast not too long ago, episode 235 for the listeners who might be curious if you missed it, where Joseph and I talked about the creative process and a new thing you were building, which I want you to tell us about again a little bit. But since then, I have interacted and actually had some coaching clients who have been through your program, and they speak very highly of you. They have learned a lot. They have grown in creativity. They feel freer as composers. So, dude, you're doing something right. I think you've built something really, really good, and I just want to applaud you for that.
Thanks, Garrett. That means a lot.
Yeah. So just real quickly, recap. Give us the 30-second version of what you have been doing.
Well, as you mentioned, I started a program called the Wizarding School for Composers. This is essentially the composition course that I wish I had in college that helps bring together all of the pieces that you sort of get in separate classes in college, putting them together in one thing so you can sort of see the big picture of this is how creativity works, especially towards the end of how is it that you can take all of this technique that you have and put it into an efficient, functional, joyful, creative process.
And how many times have you run it now?
This is the third time that I'm running it right now.
Awesome. And where can people go so they can learn more about this and check it out and sign up for it if they want?
If they go to my website, josephsowa.com, that's SOWA, it's just right there.
Excellent. So you and I are going to talk about something else entirely at this point, but I want to just get an update on, besides the course, what else have you been doing as a creative? You know, the heart of the show is we do a little bit of this. We build our careers by serving others in multiple ways. And you have this school. What else have you been doing?
Well, a lot of things. I think let's get down to the big thing that we're all here for. I've been composing.
Yay!
One of the things so I've been writing some chamber works and some band works. I just finished a piece for grade 2 band, which is middle school level for those that don't know the band grading levels. I had a ton of fun writing that piece, and it's getting performed and premiered this month.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a blast. That piece was inspired by football instant replays. So I wrote this theme and variations based on football instant replays, and I called it After Further Review, and it was just fun having that as an inspiration in the background. But the other composing thing that I did that I'm really excited about, I wrote my first film score this last month.
Really?
So, yeah, I collaborated with the professor and some students at Northeastern University to score a short 10-minute documentary about single-use plastics. And it was just so much fun. This is something that we don't, at least concert composers, we don't get to do as much of collaborating with other people. And I just loved that experience of collaborating with the team.
Tell me more about it. What about the collaborative process really stood out to you?
The first thing that immediately stands out to me is that I'm working with a bunch of non-professional musicians. Some of them had some musical background, but the professor was actually a professor of economics, and she didn't have any musical background. And so you go in, when you're collaborating with filmmakers, they feel so vulnerable just because they don't necessarily know all the musical terms. But they've made this movie and they've invested all of their heart and soul into it. And so I think part of the fun is just being able to be there and be supportive and really trying to reassure them that you're trying to capture their vision and having this dialogue of what is it that you want the listener to feel? Where is it that you want music? Where don't you want music? How can we take your story and just make it pop because of the music that I'm putting underneath it?
It's a fun process, isn't it? Now you've had this experience, which was a new experience for you. What are things that we could take from the media world that you experienced and can incorporate into the concert music world to make that experience better for all parties? So the performer, the composer, and the listener.
Well, I'm humbled that you're asking me this question, Garrett, and I mean that really sincerely because I know that you've had a bunch of really fantastic media composers on your show who would have a lot more to say about this. My 2 cents on it, at least, is importing this attitude of service. I feel oftentimes in the concert realm, and again, it's the freedom that you get typically to write in the concert realm is really wonderful. But I feel oftentimes as concert composers, if we're not careful, we can be a bit too self-serving. That we can approach audiences and performers and ensembles and institutions and say, "This is my vision. Pay attention to me." As opposed to turning it around and being like, well, what are your musical needs? What are your artistic goals? What are your desires? How can I help you fulfill what it is that you're trying to accomplish? Not in the sense of, you being sort of like a puppet on the strings of writing the piece that they would want to write, but in the sense that we just have such this amazing opportunity for service in concert music that when we lionize figures like Beethoven, or we think that we should be on this pedestal and that, lowly performers should, do our bidding, we just miss out on this really wonderful opportunity for service and collaboration. And I think that that's something, the little taste that I've had of the media world, I think that that's something that I would just love to see more of in the concert world.
I'm really glad you said that. And the word you used in particular was service. And that's been a word that's been on the tip of my tongue a lot lately as I've been helping other people build their businesses. Because I'm convinced if we begin to think about what we do as serving our audience, whether that audience is the performer, the conductor, or the people in the seats, everyone wins. And that, like you said, the focus on the composer as kind of the ultimate end of what we're doing, I think is a dead end in terms of bringing new audiences in and helping everybody get whatever they need out of it, whether it's entertainment or liturgical purposes or educational purposes, whatever. It should be a collaborative process because we're serving each other, we're helping each other.
Yeah, well, and the other thing, the other real, not to make it too big, but the other real miracle of it is, so many of us have these insecurities in our music and about reaching out to other people.
Mm-hmm.
And approaching our composing from an attitude of service does so much to just take your ego out of it.
Yes.
And to create this sense of security and fun because it's no longer about you, it's about the person that you're serving.
Right. And that makes you more attractive as a composer too. People are drawn to you because you've made them the hero of the story, not you.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there is nothing but positives with serving other people. So...
Absolutely. And you and I both can come from a position of faith as well and say, we're instructed to be serving others. And when we do that, everyone benefits.
Yeah. Well, actually, can we just dig on that just a little bit?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, something that's been on my mind for the last several years is just imagine. So I'm a Christian, and imagining Jesus as the perfect artist, and just like looking at his ministry through this lens of this is what a perfect artist would look like. So that's just been, whether or not you have your listeners have, believe in Jesus Christ or whether it's just a story for them, either way is fine. I just think he's really interesting of looking at him through this lens of how can we modeling my artistry and my service as an artist on his model.
Yeah. What are one or two lessons that you think we can pull from Jesus's model as this ideal artist into what we do as creatives?
Well, the service thing, of course, is the very first thing that comes to mind is that, Jesus was leading from a position of service.
Yes.
And I think particularly Jesus had no time for prestige games. Like that was just not what he was about. I mean, whether it was the prestige games of, the other people that were in his society, or even like his own disciples trying to play prestige games among themselves or with him, that was just not something, he just didn't have any tolerance for that. And I think it's just such a challenging but inspiring model where it's like, on the one hand, here is someone who deserves to have this massive ego, of anyone possibly. And yet, here is someone who knows his capabilities and knows his calling, but is so humble about it. I mean, obviously that's like an understatement. The way that Jesus was able to, on the one hand, be in full possession of his talents and who he was, while also never really making it about him.
Yes.
I think that's really inspiring.
Humility is a hard thing to even define. I like C.S. Lewis's definition, which was something along the lines of humility is not thinking less of yourself. It's more about just talking about yourself less, or making other people the most important thing, listening to them, finding out what they need.
Yeah, no, I think that encapsulates it really well.
I'm sure I made some error in that quotation from C.S. Lewis,
well,
but
it's a paraphrase.
It's along those lines of, it's just, sometimes we think of humility as like, oh, I am less than you. But I don't think that's humility. It's more about making other people more. Yeah, well, it's one way of thinking about it is this, rising tide lifts all ships. Mm-hmm. But again, while we're sitting around in Faithland, it makes me think of Paul and his metaphor of the body of Christ. It's just that there's this really wonderful idea when you recognize that no one of us is sufficient to ourselves, and that if we are actively looking for, okay, I know that I have this to contribute, but I'm just a larger part of this whole. Yes. And how is it that we can lift each other up and learn from each other and rely on each other? I just love that. I just read that passage not too long ago. It's a good metaphor. It's a good reminder too. Bringing it back to the musicians, music almost more than any other creative endeavor just really speaks to this. Like if you're an orchestra, you can't perform a Brahms symphony if you're just the flute. It doesn't work. No.
it needs everybody. And, whether we're performers or composers or mixers or producers or whatever our role is in music, again, coming back to it, leading from this attitude of service, and how is it that we can build each other as a community? Obviously, that speaks to my faith, but it also speaks to, it just speaks to this posture of how is it that we can best contribute, and how is it that we can best make careers in music that not only are, financially, intellectually, spiritually, whatever, rewarding, but also leave the world around us a better place too.
Yes. Actively seek to improve our communities, seek out righting wrongs, taking care of the poor and the needy, the ones amongst us who we were actually instructed in the Bible to take care of. Yeah, but we can do that through our music, through serving others, I'm convinced.
I'm right there with you.
Yep. All right, let's change tracks here. Hard left turn. This is actually the reason why we got on this call. And thanks for playing with me, Joseph, because I know that you and I share some beliefs there. And so I think it's good to explore those at times. We actually got on this call because you're currently building a new thing. Tell us about the Career Success Spellbook.
When you're in school, you are very rightly learning all this technique. You're taking harmony classes and counterpoint classes and orchestration, all these other things. And, depending on what school you go to, you either have to hustle with your peers to make performances happen, or either bring you performers or whatever. The big thing that doesn't happen when you're in school, and this is just, it's partly a function of there's not really time in most curriculums, and partly a function of, universities, for better or for worse, deserve this reputation of being an ivory tower. You don't necessarily learn the skills and things you need to know if you want to get more performances and commissions outside of school. Mm-hmm. And so I've put together a workshop and a month-long intensive that helps train student composers, helps prepare them for understanding how this works, and also early career composers. What is it that you can actively be doing to getting more performances and commissions for yourself?
Well, that's a big question, and it's the first question most people ask me. So give us just a sneak peek into some of the things that we'll be discussing. I mean, you just hit the big, broad category of how do we create relationships that go beyond school. But give me a little bit more detail.
I want to talk about two things.
Okay.
First thing I want to talk about is, what's the cost of entry? And then I actually want to swing back to that service thing. So there are a number of things that you learn in school, whether intentional or not, that you need to unlearn when you get out into a professional career.
Like what?
The biggest thing that you need to unlearn is you need to unlearn this competitive mindset that you develop in school. Is that school teaches you to compete with your peers, but it particularly teaches you to compete with Beethoven and Brahms and John Coltrane and, you name it. School is, putting you in the context of all these heavy hitting musicians of all different genres and saying, this is the standard of success. And that's just so insane on so many levels, just because it's I actually personally believe, and this is why I did the Wizarding School for Composers. I actually personally believe that getting to that standard of success is easier than a lot of people think. However, holding yourself to that standard of success is just so not healthy and not necessary. The way that I describe it is this way. Think of it like a high jump, right? So high jump in the Olympics, the goal is to get over the bar. It doesn't matter how far over the bar you get over, as long as you're over, you can continue playing the game. And it's a similar sort of thing with our technical and creative skills in music, is that there is a baseline of competence beyond which it doesn't matter how much more you have beyond that baseline. And this is one of the first things that we really need to wrap our heads around as early career composers, is recognizing that, look, I might not yet be as good of a composer as I hope to be, but I'm probably already a better composer than I need to be. Being a musician is a lifelong endeavor. School helps you get started on that path.
Totally.
But, it just keeps on going even when you're a professional.
100%.
Let me tie these two concepts together, right? So first, there is a baseline of competence that you need to get over. It's, and this baseline, it really depends on what field that you're in. For instance, if you are a media music composer, you need to know how to use Cubase or Logic or Pro Tools. This is a must. However, if you're an academic composer, You don't need to know those things. It's not necessary. You don't need to know what a virtual instrument is or how to program it. However, if you're an academic composer, you should probably know something about extended techniques, or whatever academic composers are into. They're just different. The requirements to be in different genres of music are different. And again, this is another one of these things that, it can sort of get lost in translation in school. But this is very true. So anyway, the point is that baseline of competence, you're trying to achieve across this baseline of competence for the person that you're serving. When you're reaching out to people to find commissions or performances, Garrett, you know that book, Are You My Mother? This, classic children's book.
Yes, I probably read that a few hundred times to my daughter. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember what was it. Is it like a duck in it or something? What's the little animal that goes around asking?
I don't know. I can't remember.
Yeah, but the point is this book is actually almost the perfect metaphor for what it is that you're trying to do when you're seeking commissions and performances. Is that, again, with this attitude of service, because every listener on your show, Garrett, is going to be bringing a different set of skills and gifts. Some of your listeners I know are really big into video game music and to film music. Others of them are, like academia or bust. Others of them really into the band world. Whatever your listener's background, you're going to be bringing a different set of skills. And in some ways, there's at least a vague idea of, okay, you're going to have some vague semblance of this is roughly the kind of person that I'm looking to reach out to. But none of us really knows initially who is the person that needs what I have to offer right now. And so when you're reaching out to people, and then this is the attitude of service, right? Like you go and you talk to people to find out, what are you doing right now in your career? What are your musical goals and objectives? And, sometimes you can be blunt of how can I help you with that? But oftentimes they aren't going to know that. And you need to ask the kinds of questions that will help smoke it out for you to figure out how it is that you can help them.
And that's what you're doing.
That's what I'm doing. Is in the workshop, there are a few other I actually am going over like 5 or 6 different myths that you sort of learn in school that you have to unlearn. And in the workshop, what I'm giving you, okay, here is the exact email template that you need to reach out to these people in order to start these conversations. And I'm giving you, here is the conversation script and the kinds of questions that you can ask that will lead to these productive conversations that will enable you to smoke out whether you'd be mutually a good fit for each other or not.
I think you're right. I think unlearning the competitive mindset is a very hard thing for us to do because we're taught from an early age about how music is supposed to be done. And we're indoctrinated into this competitive thing. And I love how you're going to address that. This episode is sponsored by Dorico, the future of scoring. And we want to feature real Dorico users so you can know that real composers out in the world today are using Dorico to make their careers happen.
My name is Tony Dobek. I am a composer, sound designer, and music production teacher from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Price was one of the main obstacles for me. However, their cross-grade pricing made it really easy and much more accessible. My workflow is just much easier. The interface is clear and easy to navigate. Took a lot less time to put a great looking score together. It's so much easier to control and get things done without pulling my hair out. The engraving tab is really spectacular. The amount of control I have over almost every aspect of the score is miles ahead of any other scoring software I've used. Not only does it make it much easier to engrave a standard score, but Dorico is becoming increasingly easy to create contemporary scores that call for unique layout and notation options. Their customer support is the best I have ever worked with. They are easy to talk to, they're easy to get a hold of, and I'm confident that I'm able to get a clear answer from them right away. And their play screen is extremely unique, and I love the way it's laid out and functions very similarly to a DAW. And the fact that I'm able to change the playback instruments to the same professional level software instruments I'm using in my DAW is incredible. I would absolutely recommend Dorico to anyone, teachers, composers, any musician. It's the future of scoring software, and it makes my life as a musician so much easier.
To download a free 30-day trial of Dorico 4, visit www.steinberg.net/TPC. But I'm very curious, what are the 5 myths that you want to address?
Yeah, well, okay. So myth number 1 is that you have to have these mythological levels of technique in order to compete. Like, you need to be, have like Mozart or John Williams levels of technique in order to compete in your thing. That's myth number 1. Myth number 2 is this idea that your music should speak for itself. That one drives me nuts, but this is just totally a myth that your music should speak for itself. Another one that just drives me crazy is of just like, this is just not accurate, and it's totally a product of both universities and the institutional nature of classical music that a lot of us are trained in, is that in order for us to succeed, we have to be picked. Is that we have to get the job or win the prize or win the call for scores or get the grant. Like that, if our success doesn't come through that, then we're doing it wrong and we're not deserving that. We otherwise have to be picked. Huge myth, totally drives me nuts. Another one, and so like two more myths, right? Another myth is having to do with how it is that we're putting our music and our stuff out into the world. Is that a lot of people treat their communications. They're approaching things from sort of like a mass communication standpoint. They're acting like they're Coca-Cola or that they're McDonald's, and they're treating their communications in this sort of way rather than prioritizing more personal connections. Another way of explaining this second myth is this idea that hustling involves spamming people's emails or hustling involves spamming people's social media. I totally get why people would feel really like gross about this, but guess what? This is just not true. Like, this is not how, I mean, even you choose the effective non-musical business. This is not how effective businesses are run. Mm-hmm. And it's even more the case with such a personal business as music is. Like, you are not trying to spam people. You don't need to do that. You don't need to be that one skeevy person in the concert.
Yep.
And then, but myth number 1 is this, and I think the most important thing is that, like, you're not trying to appeal to everyone. Is that there are, and even when you get big, so if you think of your audience like a bell curve, right? Even when you get big, what I call your fans and your advocates. I actually have a blog post about this that, if your listeners are interested, maybe we can post in the show notes. Even when you get big, your fans and your advocates are always going to be in the minority of this bell curve. And the more exposure that you get, the more people know you, there's always going to be a larger majority of people that are indifferent to you, try to avoid you, or just hate what it is that you're doing. But again, this is the myth, is that somehow, like, this idea that, because we see Beethoven or we see John Coltrane in the history books, just to keep hitting some of the same people, right? And we think, oh, like, they have somehow made it in the sense that they appeal to everyone. Well, guess what? Not everybody likes Beethoven. Not everybody likes John Coltrane. Yep. And there are people who passionately hate these composers, and so there is no level of success or pedestalizing that can ever happen to you that will insulate you from the haters.
Right. To put it another way is, you can't be all things to all people. And if you try to be, you will be nothing to anybody. And it gets down to service and personal relationships.
Yeah, it really does. And even there, I mean, the one thing that I want to just sort of leave as a teaser on this point is that what we're really trying to find our advocates. We're trying to find not just people who are like, commission us once or who will play our music once. What we're really looking for is the people who will commission us and then tell all of their friends that they should commission us too, or who will perform us and will then go to bat for us. Those are the people that we're really trying to find. And in order to find those people, and this may come as a surprise, you actually want to turn some people off, because the bat signal that finds your advocates is going to be a turnoff to people, and this is what you want. And so that's actually something that we're going to be talking about in the intensive, in the workshop, and then later on in the month-long intensive. What are the signals that you can deliberately give that will make your advocates stand up and be like, yes, I want to commission Garrett Hope, and will make your haters run for the hills?
Yes.
Like, that's what we want.
It's really funny you say this, because I've been teaching this a lot to my coaching clients as we get into particularly email marketing. And I follow this email kind of talking head called Ben Settle. And to continue the faith-based analogies here, he said he wants his list to be either hot or cold. If you're lukewarm, he wants to spit you out of his mouth, right? And there's actually some good rationale to this, because if you are building a list, or if you're building that network of people with whom you want to work, the people who are lukewarm, they're like meh about you. It's the vast majority of people you encounter in the bell curve that you were describing. But if you are spending time and effort to cultivate that relationship, they will never reciprocate. They're not going to be the ones who are going to hire you or buy your music or show up to your shows. The people who you really want on your list are the hot ones, the ones who are like, yes, give me more. Here's my money. Let's do something. Let's engage. But according to Ben Settle, having the super cold people is also really good. And they're not going to buy from you. But often the people who hate you also will not unsubscribe for your list, because they kind of want to know, well, what is Joseph going to say next? How can I get more angry? Or how can I react? And they will often give you more fodder and feedback to continue engaging with the world. So he will take his hater emails and he'll turn that into another email. This is what Ben Settle will do. And people will say, Garrett, you're wrong here, or I disagree with this, or whatever. And they often turn into personal attacks. But then I can later turn that into a teaching object in my Friday 5 newsletter or something else.
Yeah, I love that. That's fantastic.
Be hot or cold. And for those who don't know anything about the Bible, this comes from the beginning of the book of Revelation, where Jesus says to these churches, he says, you're either with me or you're not. But if you're I'm done with you.
Yeah. It's one of these, like, there's nothing new under the sun things.
Right. Yeah.
You know, where it's just like, we're just sort of like we're taking these old ideas and we're just repurpose them and finding them new ways. That's a whole other tangent about, we could have a whole other interesting conversation, Garrett, about
absolutely.
what I think originality and, a personal voice actually is.
Yep. Part of that conversation could involve ignoring the wisdom of generations that have come before us.
Yeah.
And the price of that. Yeah. But anyway, let's continue back here. So the Career Success Spellbook. This will be run through the month of June. So I hope to release this episode early to mid-May so people have time to sign up. But where do they go and how do they sign up?
So where your listeners need to go, Garrett, is if they go to josephsowa.com/TPC spellbook, that will take you right there.
Excellent. And just so everyone is clear, and because the FCC has rules around this, that is an affiliate link. So if you go through that link and you sign up for the course, you'll help me keep the lights on at the Portfolio Composer as well.
Which is, of course, what I want too. I mean, I'm excited about
me too. And is there like a deadline? When do they need to have registered for this?
Deadline is literally, June 3rd.
Okay.
You sign up by June 3rd, you're in. However, I am offering a bonus for anyone that signs up by May 15th. If you're able to sign up by May 15th, I'm going to give you a bonus one-on-one session with me where we're going to go over your catalog together. We're going to talk about your dream projects, and we're going to identify, okay, what is going to be the highest value, the best thing that you could potentially pursue over the month of June, where you could capture that and bring that project to fruition.
Okay, this is really exciting, and I've actually enjoyed this conversation a great deal. You and I got to philosophize around humility and service and using Jesus as an example, as well as talk about this new career spellbook, which I think will be a valuable resource, whether you're an emerging composer or even an established composer.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited for it. And, if I can add one more thing.
Absolutely.
So we're doing the workshop on the 4th, but what I'm really excited about is the whole month-long intensive because, and maybe Garrett is, we are too modest to say this, but in this month-long intensive, this is for people who want to take those tools and have someone take them by the hand and walk them through the process. So I'm going to be right there with you as you're sending out those emails and reaching out to people and practicing those conversations with your network, as well as giving you additional tools and additional trainings that I just don't have time to do in one day. So if you sign up for the full intensive, that's what you get. And if you sign up for the VIP intensive, you're going to get the opportunity to pick Garrett Hope's brain along with other awesome VIP composers that I'm bringing along, including Alexandra Gardner, who is the former composer in residence of the Seattle Symphony. So I'm going to have some really heavy hitters that I'm excited to have, and you'll be able to ask them and learn from their experience in seeking commissions and performances, which will be fantastic.
Well, you should sign up just to speak with Alexandra because, oh my word, she's phenomenal. And a portfolio composer guest long time ago.
The thing I love about Alex is that not only is she just a fantastic composer, but she's just like the best human being. I just love her. She's great.
She really is. Joseph, thank you for your time. Thank you for what you're doing to help build our community. As you said, a rising tide lifts all ships. And I think the more composers learn how to think this way, how to think as service and talking about other people's needs before their own, the better the industry will be for everybody.
Thanks, Garrett. And, I just really appreciate the service that you've been doing for what's it been, 5 years, 6 years of or 7?
7 years.
7 years. As far as I'm aware, you were the first podcast that was really doing this. And it's just been an amazing service for all of us.
Thanks. It's my pleasure.
You're welcome.
I plan on keeping on doing it. If I can talk.
Yeah, we've all been there.
Yep. All right. Have a great day.
Thanks. Take care, Garrett.
This episode of The Portfolio Composer was brought to you by Dorico 4, the most advanced music notation software ever created. Dorico was designed to save you time and gives you the tools you need to produce beautiful and readable scores fast, so you can spend less time fiddling with menus and rules and more time doing what you love, making music. Now you can take Steinberg's music notation and composition software with you wherever you go with Dorico for iPad. Whether you're a composer, arranger, instrumentalist, teacher, or student, Dorico is the ideal app for producing beautiful sheet music that you can share as a PDF or music XML, or print directly to your AirPrint-enabled printer. Dorico for iPad is available now in the App Store. Learn more at www.dorico.com/iPad. You can also try the full version of Dorico out for 30 days for free by downloading the trial version at www.steinberg.net/TPC. Try it today.